Good morning, guys. Welcome to this morning's creative writing session. Bear with me because this is the first time I've done a Facebook Live, so still trying to figure out how it works. Morning, Vidhi. Okay, so we're going to wait a couple of minutes just to get everyone rolling in. I hope everyone's got their chai, as was a requirement for every writing session, especially when it comes to tattva. Fairly decent turnout for a Sunday morning. Okay, so I am following in some great footsteps because I know that all of the previous guided sessions have been a success, and hopefully this will get everyone's creative juices flowing this morning as well. So I'm just gonna, while we wait for everyone to join, I'm gonna give a bit of an introduction. I'm Tejal. I am a dentist by profession and by passion, and also by passion I am into classical music, reading, I run, I practice yoga, and most relevant to this morning is writing. So my history with Tattva is that I was a participant in the 2018 cohort, and I'm currently one of the coordinators for their current authorship program. And just a little bit about Tattva is that we're an organization that exists to springboard thought leaders. We want to change and develop perspectives, be heard, and get those stories out there. And we want to make this shift from people being consumers to being creators. So talking of creating, this morning we're going to be we're making something from nothing. So I'm going to be giving you some prompts. We've got a few exercises this morning, so I'm going to be giving you some prompts and then giving you a time scale in which you'll be writing. And it's a blank canvas. Your paper is blank, and by the end of this session, which will be about 45 minutes long, it won't be blank for much longer. And for some of you, you may be experienced in writing. For others, you may not. This may be your first guided writing session. For others, we've got some regulars on board too. Regardless, it just doesn't matter. No one needs to see that piece of paper. And the point is, keep your pen to paper or pencil. I prefer using pencil, so each to your own. And all you will require this morning is a pen and a paper and some brain fuel. And so, yeah, like I said, I'll be giving you some prompts, regardless of whether you're in your comfort zone or not. Just enjoy it. Okay, so we shall start with the first exercise. So if everyone's ready, also don't forget to, if you have any questions, put it in the comments, or if your answers to your prompts, you can put it in the comments box, and we'll go from there. Okay, so the first exercise, we're going to start with some simple word association. So I'm going to give you a word. You're going to write down the first word that comes into your head in association with that word. And then I'll tell you part two when we need to do part two. So let's start. I'm going to give you about 20 to 30 seconds in between each word. So the first word is mirror. Okay. The second word is travel. The third word is music. The fourth word is yellow. The fifth word is wind. The sixth word is beauty. The seventh is breath. That's breath. The eighth is heart. The ninth is fulfill. And the 10th and final is gratitude. Okay, so that was part one. Now we've done that, I'm going to ask you to pick your top three or your favorite three of the associated words. So not the words that I said, but the words that you've written in association. And I'm going to give you 3 minutes to link them and come up with a piece of writing, so a paragraph. So write as much as you can in those 3 minutes, and just remember to keep that pen on that paper, and keep writing. Let those thoughts flow free, and I'll let you know when your time's up. And that's 3 minutes up. Goes pretty fast, right? So that was the first exercise. And we're going to move on to the second. So in the second part, I'm going to give you a word or an object, and I'm going to give you the identity of a person. And the task is to create a sentence or a statement involving that word, but written from the perspective of that particular identity. So, for example, if I had the word pen and the identity was grandfather, then I would say something like, I picked up the pen and I wrote eloquently to my wife who was stuck in India during lockdown. So just you're writing, you're not putting both of those in the sentence, but you're writing from the perspective of that particular identity. So the first one is, and I'm going to give you a minute in between to write. Like I said, feel free to add on to the comments. So the first is bicycle and bus driver. That's your minute up. The second is ukulele, which is a kind of a smaller version of a guitar for anyone that is not familiar, and grandmother. Sorry, so I'm just going to repeat that. The word was ukulele and grandmother. Going to go on to the next, which is sunshine and dentist. That's sunshine and dentist. The next one is stethoscope and toddler. That's stethoscope and toddler. And the last one in this exercise is notebook and rock climber. That's notebook and rock climber. Okay, and that was the end of that second exercise. Again, guys, I'd love to see some of these sentences. I'm quite curious to see what you're coming up with. So feel free to put it in the comments box. So the third exercise, I'm going to give you some short prompts, and I'm going to give you a minute to just write in response to what I've said. So the first one is, she quickly reached for her camera and took off the lens cap. She reached for her camera and took off the lens cap. I'm going to move on to the second one. So, suddenly, the hairs on my arm stood upright. Suddenly, the hairs on my arm stood upright. And the last one. I gazed into the candlelight. I gazed into the candlelight. Okay, so that was the end of the third exercise. I'm just going to read out some of these comments. We've got Shiv here, who evidently knows me pretty well. So I assume this is in response to the second exercise, rock climber and notebook. During the day, Tejal hit the rocks hard. The daily discipline of yoga had given her the strength to climb that rock wall she had been meaning to conquer for a long time. In the evening, she took rest in the shelter of her notebook, proclaiming her gratitude to the Almighty for helping her achieve her goals. That is very accurate, Shiv. Thrashar has written in response to this the last prompt, which was I gazed into the candlelight. I gazed into the orange flame where the spark of the candlelight I saw unseen. Can make a lot out of that one. So now I'm going to go on to the last exercise, which is a little bit more extensive. So I'm going to read out some excerpts from books, which I will later reference. And then I'm going to give you 3 minutes. I'm going to give you 3 minutes to, again, just write and put that pen to paper. So the first, and I'm going to reference these books after, just because I don't want them to influence your answers. So the first is, the strongest athlete isn't the one who finishes first. That athlete is the fastest. The strongest athlete is the one who gets up again every time he falls. The one who doesn't stop when he feels a pain in his side. The one who doesn't abandon the race, no matter how far away the finish line is. And that's your time up for that one. We have Rax, whose response was, I have the Eye of the Tiger tune in my head now for that, which is one of my favourite songs, actually. I will save you all and not sing it for you this morning. But understandable. The second one is, suddenly the scale changed. The music grew louder and more thunderously beautiful, and finally became deafening as it slowly slipped over him like an invisible comforter. Then there was silence. I'm going to say that one once more. Suddenly the scale changed. The music grew louder and more thunderously beautiful, and finally became deafening as it slowly slipped over him like an invisible comforter. Then there was silence. That's your 3 minutes up for that second one. And now we're going to go on to the third. Everything is determined by forces over which we have no control. It is determined for the insect as well as for the star. Human beings, vegetables, or cosmic dust We all dance to a mysterious tune, intoned in the distance by an invisible piper. I'm going to say that once more. Everything is determined by forces over which we have no control. It is determined for the insects as well as for the stars. Human beings, vegetables, or cosmic dust, we all dance to a mysterious tune, intoned in the distance by an invisible piper. Okay, and moving on to the last one. I've always been a daydreamer, and sometimes in lessons, my mind would drift, and I'd imagine that on the way home, a terrorist might jump out and shoot me on those steps. I wondered what I would do. I'm going to repeat that once more. I've always been a daydreamer, and sometimes in lessons, my mind would drift, and I'd imagine that on the way home, a terrorist might jump out and shoot me on those steps. I wondered what I would do. And your time is up. There's a big part of me that wants to do the countdown theme tune, you know. I probably shouldn't have done that. Anyway, so I am going to reference these excerpts from these books. So the first one, about the athlete, is actually from a book I'm reading at the moment called The Librarian of Auschwitz, by an author called Antonio Etube. The second, about music, is from a book called The Sixth String of Vilayat Khan, by an author called Namita Devi Dayal. For anyone who is into music, or even if you're not, regardless, it really, really describes the life of a musician, an amazing musician at that, really beautifully. The third one was a quote from Einstein, from a book that I recently read called How to Think Like Einstein by an author called Daniel Smith. And it was actually Einstein's take on God and religion, and I found it really interesting, as he was a scientist and much more. And the last one was from I Am Malala by Malala Yousafzai, from her autobiography. So, guys, that is a wrap to this morning's session. But I am just going to read out some of the comments. The last one by Harsha. She says, and at that point, the very air he breathed was filled with musical notes, and the sounds of the orchestra had infused itself with the elements, and it became an all-consuming entity. It was as if a wave of bass and treble had grown 5 stories and had crashed into him. He was suffocated, yet cradled by the almighty rhythms. That's really beautiful, Harsha. So vivid. So vivid. I actually wanted to end with a few words that I was told when I was once going through a writer's block. Before I say what I gotta say, I'm gonna ask you to take a look, mindfully take a look at what was once a blank piece of paper nearly 44 minutes and 30 seconds ago. Just take a look at this piece of paper and realize what you've created. Whatever's written on that piece of paper, no one has ever written those words in that combination with that intention ever before. So while it might not seem like it's a big deal to put pen to paper, sometimes those words don't feel good enough. Sometimes they don't feel effective. Sometimes it feels like they haven't been strung together properly. And sometimes it even feels aimless to write. But it is a big deal, because you just created. You're a creator. So with that thought, I'm going to leave you all to have a really beautiful Sunday. And if you feel like transitioning from creative writing to critical thinking, critical writing, then make sure you join Snehal at 11. I really hope that you guys have had a great morning. Thank you for showing up. This was my first live session, my first creative writing guided session, and it's been a pleasure to share it with you all. Thank you. Take care.